Theophilus Ahern, Managing Director, MPSG, Representative National Petroleum Corporation, GMPC, Petroleum Commission, Parliamentary Select Committee on Energy, Ghana, Ghana Upstream Chamber on Petroleum, Deans, Heads of Departments, students, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great pleasure and an honor to join you this afternoon for this important looking beyond physical elements. On behalf of the Vice Chancellor and the University Management, I extend my warmest welcome to all our distinguished guests, industry experts, faculty, students, and all stakeholders present. The topic for today's lecture is both timely and crucial, given the evolving dynamics of the global energy sector. As a nation endowed with petroleum resources, Ghana has made significant strides in harnessing these resources for economic growth. The potential of our petroleum sector requires a more holistic approach, one that goes beyond fiscal policies and revenue generation. Beyond the conventional focus on taxation, royalties, and revenue sharing models, it is imperative to explore value addition, local content development, technological advancements, environmental sustainability, and long-term economic diversification. Maximizing the benefits of petroleum resources demands strategic investments in research, human capital, and innovation to ensure that we not only extract value, but also sustain it for future generations. As an institution committed to advancing science and technology, KNUST is proud to host this important discussion. Our College of Engineering continues to play a pivotal role in shaping the future of Ghana's oil and gas industry through research, training, and industry collaboration. This lecture provides an excellent opportunity to engage in meaningful dialogue, share insights, and propose practical solutions that will inform policy and drive national development. I wish to express my sincere appreciation to the organizers for putting together this event, and I particularly commend our esteemed speaker for accepting the invitation to share his expertise with us. I am confident that today's discussions will be enlightening and will contribute to shaping policies and strategies that maximize the true value of our petroleum resources. With these remarks, I declare this public lecture officially open and encourage all participants to engage actively in the discourse. Thank you.
Asamoah for the address. Thank you. The next on the program, I want to invite on stage the Provost of the College of Engineering in the person of Engineer Professor Kwabena Brichum Nyako to introduce our speaker for today. A round of applause to him as he mounts the podium. Keep clapping so you see him on the stage.
privileged to enjoy that of Professor Alote and a few others. And on that day, I got to learn a little bit about the public lectures in KNUS. He is a passionate technical and business leader, strong advocate for good natural resource governance with over 30 years extensive practice in the upstream petroleum industry. He has played key roles in the three-stage segment in the upstream petroleum industry in Ghana. He has been with the National Oil Company, GNPC. He worked on various projects, co-managed non-operated assets, and served as carbon leads and prospects, including the two Upper Cretaceous deep waters, Fund 6 and 7, and that was in 1999. A prelude to the Mahogany 1 deep water discovery in Ghana. In his career, he has interfaced, engaged, and negotiated with, and regulated several international oil companies, including Hess, AGM, Vanco, Cosmos, Tallow, and ENI. He has fostered partnerships between indigenous and international service companies in Ghana and engaged successfully with local communities and development partners. He also led an MOU with KNUST, and through that we have a number of active activities. The first is through him we managed to get internship for our faculty managers. Our faculty members have had that exposure and make internship available to our students. Not only that, he's visited our petroleum labs, he's seen the equipment we have, and has initiated discussions for us to provide services to the industry. Instead of taking samples outside Ghana, our labs will be providing that service. For about a decade, he was involved in the development of key legislation in the upstream sector. And this includes the Petroleum Commission Act 2011, Act 821, the Petroleum Exploration and Production Act of 2016, Act 919, and the latest subsidiary legislation. And in collaboration with the National Insurance Commission, the protocol for the oil and gas insurance placement for the upstream sector was developed. As acting CEO of the Petroleum Commission, he drove the development of the regulatory body and nurtured the growth of indigenous participation and upstream industry in general, during which the number of FPSOs developed in Ghana's offshore grew from 1 to 3. Please check the percentage increase undergraduate students. It increased from 1 to 3, so I want to know the percentage from you. He served on the Ministerial Advisory Board 2014 to 2016 and also acted as technical advisor 2018-2019 at the Ministry of Energy in Ghana. Between 2006 and 2008, he led a successful turnaround of the Prestige Sankofa Limited into a profitable company. I thought we were going to give it to him. Institute, Ghana, the Ghana Oil and Gas Inclusive Growth, and the New Producers Group. He has also promoted Ghana's oil and gas prospectivity and spoken on various related subject matters around the world. He was the keynote speaker at the Extractive-Led Economic Diversification Conference, Reconciling Trade and Local Content Development for the World Bank in New Mexico in 2016. He has a number of technical teams on the Ghana successful maritime claim of limits beyond the 200 nautical miles at the UN Commission for the Limit of the Continental Shelf, USA, and the Ghana-Cote d'Ivoire Maritime Dispute at the International Tribunal on Law of the Seas in Germany. Our speaker is Mr. Theophilus Nyako Akren. Ghana JV Limited, a leading specialist for floating oil and gas production system that provides operation and maintenance services on behalf of Talo Ghana Limited and its partners on the FPSO, Professor John Evans Atta Mills. He serves on the board of the General Trust Company Limited, Ghana Upstream Petroleum Chamber, and he is its vice chairman and is a fellow of the Ghana Institution of Geosciences. He holds an MSc in Exploration Geophysics from International Institute for Aerospace Survey and Earth Sciences in Delft, the Netherlands. An executive MBA Finance from University of Ghana Business School, a postgraduate certificate in Management of Petroleum Development and Operations from Norway, and a BSc Physics from the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. Mr. Theophilus Nyako.
triggers a lot of emotions around the world because that is the beginning. Finds or a curse. And I even find that question itself a misnomer. It's like asking is a blessing or a curse. I guess the question itself is faulty. As a Vice Chancellor, I would think that the state can derive from petroleum resources outside the very popular ones that usually are trumpeted by many people, including civil society, among others. I guess when you start participation, people are very familiar and passionate. And I hear a lot of people asking, why don't we get more? Now, the ratio of how much that a nation gets in comparison to what the contractor gets is what is called the government take. And it's very natural to let any nation desire to have a greater than other countries. Assure a nation what you get. It is actually a fact, the prospectivity of that country. In other words, whilst say Ghana could be in the range of about 50-55%, takes in a region of about the of drilling a well in the quality of country. So in other words, your chance factor is much higher, and therefore there is a limit of government take the nation can have. Now, take, which is fairly a kind of a market value, there are other things that resource nations can in a position to be clear foundations must undertake to ensure that this, in trying, I would be speaking with you around as it is above here. Petroleum itself, for me, is not a curse, but it's an enigma. And if you really want to get around that puzzle, there's a need for nations to prepare adequately for you to be able to derive the benefits. I would also show you petroleum has become a platform for launching sustainable development. I mentioned get into what we could do to create other than the receipts. About cost management is that oil. We go down the presentation, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to explain to you that this economic desire can be achieved. There are examples that go. Could see a lot of the world And in this presentation, you would hear me using the expression onshore, shallow water, deep water, and deep water. For the onshore exploration, I'm talking about petroleum. Speak about offshore, and when I talk about shallow water, 0 to 200 meters. Basically, we're 1,000 meters water. And anything termed as ultra deep. To give you a few highlights about how nations have used the discovery of petroleum. Works. See what it works? Okay. Good. Thank you. Now, for you to plunge into the arena of getting the greater benefits of resource, there's a need for you to do a lot of work and very comprehensive. There is a comprehensive of the economy as a nation, because it is based on that you would realize where the gaps are to be able to launch sustainable development. So that is really very important. Sorry? Okay. It is also key that you make an analysis of the resource that you have discovered. And this is important because the viscosity of the fluid determines a lot of directions you could go. If you find a fluid that is very viscous, as it is in the area of Venezuela and other areas, you would know that you have a lot of work to do, increasing the temperature, the thickness of the fluid before you produce. And to the other extreme, if the gas oil ratio, that means that you have to go to understanding the profile of the resource you have is one of the key things you should do. Now, having realized in a would be in the position about what gaps you want to proffer to the development of your country. Other very key factors, and I've talked about its location, the quality, and that's very critical as well. If you have a very marginal field, you need to improve the economics. I mean, your net present value then becomes tight to make the NPV of and then you need to look at the market as that is another very important factor. And so these factors need to desire to develop. Now, I think I would practically of how this has been done. After gas many decades. And we started having problems with where our demand for our wisdom from Nigeria. Eventually, that delivers gas from the scrabble as generate electricity. Now, I would say that Norway, what this afternoon about. So Norway, of Norway's electricity is from one that petroleum because it was there. They moved Delta and basically decided that so they decided to go a 2020% of all new vehicles that were actually the way you use petroleum to develop. And revenues from petroleum. And they have sovereign wealth. That currently the value of the Norwegian sovereign fund is 1.7. Tells us about sustainable. Another revenue comes from gas commercialization. They, on the other hand, environment that made it production facilities. Most popular of them being an FPSO. An FPSO stands for Floating Production. This is the big ship. And for your 3 FPSOs, and 2 of them were built by Modec, my company, but all 3 were built in Singapore. And that tells you the dominance of Singapore, even without substantial oil and gas. So, ladies and gentlemen, there are many things we can do when we put our mind to it. And I think these examples have shown clearly to you that when you all know that in June 2007, this country was lucky to be the Jubilee Field. Mr. Pro Vice Chancellor, this brought a lot of excitement to Ghana. There were a lot of deliberations and what to do. God. Now the nation and flair to produce. So and I think that our passion for the politicians in Ghana around that time issued no policy. There were a lot of countries that thought, oh, you guys are joking. I mean, a small country, you've just found oil. How bold are you to be able to do that? We did. The gas by utilizing. We were going to produce that oil. We needed to find a market to export the gas. Not been developed, and therefore the consensus that was very well damage it. We're going to start production. We will be injecting gas into the reservoir and monitoring it, and quickly build the Ghana gas plant at 12. But then, because we wanted to inject the gas as a resource for maintaining reservoir pressure, the GNPC undertook a study that demonstrated that if we use water injection for reservoir maintenance, we would achieve all the same recovery factor as the gas, and therefore we were able to make the point that we would not take the gas for them to use water because they just wanted to flow the gas. Now, the consensus reached was that the Jubilee partners were going to make available to the government of Ghana 200 billion over the period of production. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let me say that this became a reality from 2011 thereabouts, when the production started at the end of 2010, and then there was injection, and after that, the Ghana gas plant became operational. GNPC, on behalf of the state, started off taking gas, and over time, between 2011 thereabout, or the commencement of Ghana gas activities, this country was able to take delivery of gas all the way from that time until 2023, when the 200 billion cubic feet of gas ran out. Now, If you do a calculation of the cost of that gas at a nominal figure of $3 per MMBTU, that 200 billion feet of gas is equivalent to close to 700 million US. That is what optimization delivers to the state. We all know the great benefits of the 12 today. Most of the LPG we use in our homes are actually produced from the. Now, how do you prepare a nation to become ready for managing its oil and gas? There are things we need to do. We need to develop legislation, which this country did, after which we build then institutions. As you may know, there are many models of running this industry. One of the most popular ones is what we call the tripartite model, in which you have the ministry responsible in Ghana. It is the Ministry of Energy and now green transition. And then you have the national company, in our case, the GNPC. And then you have the regulatory body, which is the Petroleum. Institutions and build the capacity of individuals. This, I tell you, is so important. You cannot overstate it. Now, moving on to talk about how we could get value outside these fiscal incentives, I have indicated that most people focus on what is called the profit oil, which I've explained to you a moment ago, that this is limited by a certain way. The best way of getting more value is to be able to optimize or think outside what the obvious is. Now, so remember, we've spoken about the first part of this optimization or value creation that talks about using the oil for sustainable development. This next segment talks about the life cycle value chain. So in the upstream, the chain moves all the way from licensing, that is when you have the permit, to explore for oil and gas. You go through exploration, appraisal, development, production, and then you decommission or remove facilities to return the place to the original state before to operate. Now, I will be telling you about why that is so important for us to take the value chain very seriously. Licensing. I mean, why is licensing so important? It is very important because eventually the decision you make about a partner to explore for oil and gas in your country can be the decision that destroys your industry. Expertise and the financial capacity to be able to do this. More often than not, you would have a lot of briefcase businessmen who say you want to come explore for oil and gas. It's good to try, but you need to understand the risk profile of this business. And I don't think it does anybody any good when the wrong partner is chosen. The Petroleum Agreement stipulates the rights and responsibility of the state, the national oil company, and the international company as well. Now, it is during this process that we negotiate for the fiscal terms on behalf of the state. And because of the complexity of this business, you have the ability to negotiate well for the state, having in mind your geological promise and the government take is very, very important. And I give an example about the financial impact. That if, for example, the Petroleum Agreement was able to achieve a royalty to the states 1% higher than what originally was the case, using a nominal oil price of $70 a barrel, that relates to $350 million additional revenue to the state. And this is just about moving from a royalty of 4 to 5 or 5 to 6. And so this is why this process, although it might look very benign, is very, very important. Because if you get it wrong at this point, you are going to suffer for a very long time. Now, once the company has the license to operate, and typically in Ghana, this is ratified by Parliament, so it becomes so to speak. You begin to explore. And exploration comes with its own issues. A company that might have a block in Ghana might have blocks in maybe 10, 20, or 30 other countries. And it becomes the question of your baby is prettier than mine. So at the end of the day, why would a company operating in 20 countries decide that they will put more resources and emphasis on Ghana compared to, say, Ivory Coast or Libya? There has to be a justification. And that is a measure of the preparedness of the local participant, the national company, the regulator, the ministry, etc., where you package legacy data. And you must have people who have control over the local geology. Somebody will be able to tell you confidently that, no, if you tell me that the porosity in the Turonian rock at this water depth is less than 15%, I will disagree, and I'll ask that we do another test. That means that you are confident about knowledge of the geology of your area. And these are very, very important, because if you don't, you would have yourself to blame. The next stage of the cycle is appraisal. And basically what this does is to prove commerciality. And I give this example all the time. If all the petroleum you have found is just to fill this room, then there is no story. You need to find out, taking all the factors into consideration, the porosity of the rock, the permeability of the rock, the volume, the viscosity, the market value, the water depth, the depth of the formation, etc. You do your modeling, and you will be able to say that this project is commercial or non-commercial. In this, there are many assumptions that are made, and those assumptions themselves kill the project. So if you, for example, say that there will be no market for gas when you produce them, that alone brings the prospectivity down significantly. You must demonstrate, you must prepare to be able to say that the state will offtake petroleum, the state will offtake, say, this is the market, this is the gas price, to give confidence to the investor to proceed from this point. Ladies and gentlemen, the next very important stage is development. And I love the development phase because not only is this the most capital intensive, it is where a lot of the technology comes to play. To give you an idea, ladies and gentlemen, a typical deep water development in Ghana would cost anything between about 3 to 7 to maybe about $8 billion. Certain developments around the world are in excess of $10 billion. So if there is a country with a GDP of 70 billion and you are having a development that is 7 billion, mathematically you are having conversations around a project which is 10% of GDP. So it's a very, very important part of the business. Where once again the preparedness of the state comes to play, because there are a lot of assumptions, there's a lot of modeling that takes place, and remember, the interests of the parties in the discussion are not the same. The operator, who is leading the IOCs, has a different objective, the state has a different objective, and even within the state parties, managers who come from the angle of GRA in Ghana and Ministry of Finance. You have the environment managers in the nature of EPA and their ministry. And then you come to the resource management arm of it, and that is the Ministry of Energy, GMPC, and the Petroleum Commission. Now, the interplay of these institutions is very, very important. And I did say in the lecture somewhere in Sweden years ago that the misalignment between state entities in petroleum at times outweigh what happens between the states and the company. So do not expect that all the discussions or very tough sessions are between the state and the oil company. It could also be between, say, EPA and GMPC, Petroleum Commission, and GRA. Because if your environmental regime is very, very strict, you spend a lot of offshore on land. And by so doing, it makes the economics of the project suffer. So development phase is very important. This is where the bulk of local content does happen. And I'm pleased to tell you that with a drive by government in the Jubilee 10 and ENI developments, the state was able to direct components of this FPSO to be fabricated here in Ghana and then sent for consolidation in Singapore. And I think this is something as a nation we have to be proud about. The oil company has made his discoveries, and then initially he's funding the project. He'll bring it ready to go to country, come and do the job, take the money and walk away. He'll bring his team from his host country, come and do the job, at all. Take the money and walk away. So these discussions committed and long-term view and value for the country. Think about the long-term view and value. It's a very important document, and this part of the business could save a nation so much money. And it's not ask me that the plan of development for a field, if you were able to optimize the plan of development for a field, oil company from a certain amount to the other, it doesn't necessarily say so. What it means was looking for the most cost-effective way to resources. So, for example, if the contractor is of opinion that he wants to drill the reservoir, your modeling can say that I will drill 13 wells and do what we call multilateral completions, where one well is able to produce from multiple zones from just one well. And by so doing, I'm going to reduce the number of wells from say 70 to 30. $70 million, and the completion of the well can be another 70. We are talking about a difference of $140 million per well. So if you are talking about 5 wells, you are talking about $700 million reduction. So the optimization is so optimization is very, very produced. So if you spend too much money, they'll from oil produced. So if you spend too much money, there'll be very little for the state to have. So that means a lot to me. Passionate minds, challenging companies, and in one case, we were able to $1 billion for one project. I would also go back to my good friends again, Norway. Abundance of clinker. Talked about how, in the early part of oil production, they realized that they had abundance of clinker and wanted use for it. They were able to direct the company. They take a lot of material. So because they had abundance of clinker and they wanted to commercialize it, they made utilize concrete. They made you stretch your arm into this business to create value. Ladies and gentlemen, very popular in this country, and that is local content. I've had to answer a lot of questions in my career about local content. Would I say, fortunately or unfortunately, to be the regulator when the Local Content Act became law in February 2014. And this was a very, very favorite question and topic of local content. That it is one of the most misunderstood topics in the industry. Because production happens over a very long time, if nations prepare very well, over that, say, 10 to 40 years you are going to produce, you will be in a position to localize certain services so that over that 10 or businesses will benefit oil. this doesn't happen accidentally. There is a need for you to be able to achieve this. If you think very, very hard, you will realize that you could create value for your country. Because of the experiences the world have gone through, in the last couple of decades, the oil industry has been very responsible, and as we start, you start to move the facility. It's a very, very well. One of the arms of this is setting up what is called the decommissioning fund, putting money aside for the removal of the facilities. And depending on the nature of the facility, these things could run into a few tens to several hundred millions of dollars. Now, these monies are set aside from a certain determined point to the end of field. Now, nations that have done very well have negotiated that this savings fund sits within the country, and it becomes a good buffer for. Imagine we being able to $100 million for the decommissioning of the field, and this money being a long-term fund available to the central bank and the Ministry of Finance. It does it. That whole process costs a lot of money. You save money for the state. Let me get to the third segment, cost management. And you realize that I did say from the very beginning that perhaps, and this is my own personal view, that the management of petroleum costs may be much more important than the discovery of oil. Because if you will just be experiencing some very nice technology going offshore, the oil is produced, the money is used to pay for all the operations, and the nation gets nothing. We will be doing a lot of commissioning in Kente Plus, will remain nothing. I mean, it's an area that if a nation is going to get benefit, very, very strong. It won't just come lying down. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. There needs to be clear mandate. If you are telling GRA that you are complex arrangements in, for example, the ring fencing arrangements of the drilling of wells, and they do not know what that means, I wonder how they can administer and take the revenue. And this is a very important area. Whether a well counts for cost recovery or not can be a conversation around $150 million. So it's a very, very important area we need to look at very well. You need to train the people, and the state actors must be aligned. If the revenue manager and the resource manager, the Petroleum Commission, are misaligned, it gives the operators the opportunity to do what the revenue manager of managing. So the alignment of state actors is very, very important, and we must take it very seriously. There are many technicalities in there. What I would say is that alignment needs to be mandate to be able to collect the revenues you expect from companies. I don't think any company likes to pay income tax very easily. If you don't make the legislation very clear and the process very clear, people would not, or companies would not pay that tax. Mr. Provost and the Pro-Vice Chancellor, ladies and gentlemen, I have been speaking in the last hour or so about the need for us to be able to get a lot of revenue, a lot of value from our resource. I have indicated from the very beginning that this doesn't just happen. It requires that you do a very comprehensive analysis and appreciate the structure of your economy. The state must have objectives or goals as to what it wants to achieve. The potential resource that you have found and its nature. The geopolitics is very, very important in the market. And these things in an environment where there are, in other words, there are laws, there are acts, there are regulations. That's A and not B. That is required. We need to be able to do a comprehensive review. I would also sum up by saying that the discipline to adhere to the policies, legislation, guidelines, etc. And that is one area that we can lose a lot of value. I argued in the upstream chamber, where I'm the vice chairman, that there is nothing wrong with the fiscal regime in Ghana. What the industry wants is the predictability of the regulatory regime. The investment in gas is very low. He wants to be able to, by the time it comes, nothing has changed. 2, 3, 4, 1 year, you are telling an oil and gas investor that I don't need you. So it is, and it's the issue of predictability of the regulatory regime. Expertise is key. Who is successful in finding hydrocarbons has done his job. But one has thrown away $70 million. The one has used $70 million to open up a country that will change forever. So expertise is key. And I did say a moment ago that confirmation even of the porosity of permeability of a rock and this cannot be correct, Mr. IOC, and we want, and humbly, we've been able to win a lot of those arguments because you study the geology, you know this is how it has to be. If somebody is trying to say, look, this prospect is not good because your porosity is 10%, you will tell him that no, in the Turonian sands in Tama, we've done extensive work and we think this is not possible. Let's get an independent study. That is an appreciation of your local geology, and that is key. Now, the last item I want to talk about is that we make. It comes into question all the time. And if you are arguing or negotiating with a company whose market capitalization is maybe 4 or 5 times your country's GDP, you must have a lot of confidence to be able to make your point. But that is important because if you don't, things don't get happen. So the point, the quality management of the operations is very, very important for the nation to derive the value that it requires. These great significant value, and as I said, the revenue we may get from fiscal, if you put the and then all the value chain, time has proved from these value creation and value chain optimization than fiscal incentive. Thank you very much for the time.
If you have any questions for him, he says as many as you want to ask. Feel free and ask. right, we have in our presence here the chairman of the University Public Lectures Committee in the person of Professor James Opon Jechiku. Let's give him Checheku. Oh, sorry. Prof, you are warmly welcome. So we want to engage all of you. If you have any questions, please feel free. You show my hand and then give you a microphone and then you ask.
All right. Any other question? Maybe three.
Thank you for this opportunity. My question is, you mentioned
Any other question? Okay, as you think of your question, maybe say you can answer them.
Thank you very much. The question about the energy transition. I tried very hard. Very similar to what we did in the case of white cake. All kind of convenience agreements were made. This is my view about energy transition. I reacted, my response. But I tell you, this is my personal opinion. Yes, the world is getting warmer, but there are many things we can do to reduce the level of carbon emission without dismantling the huge knowledge, infrastructure, systems, and capital around the world that we have built because of petroleum. There are many little things that almost every country can do. I mean, you look at Ghana, for example. Most people may not think about, but Ghana has been very, very, very responsible in terms of energy sustainability and environmental cleanliness. Ghana has been firing our plants using hydro. So for many years, Ghana was basically based on hydro, Akosombo and upon hydroelectric projects. Whilst countries were using coal, we were using hydro. And hydro, as you know, is one of the cleanest of the fuels. Ghana used that. When that was not enough, One of the easy things was we have gone to coal. Ghana transitioned to thermal energy. And when you get into thermal energy, there are two main options. Either you use liquid fuel or gas. Gas is the cleanest. And this is when the ideas of the West African gas pipeline came into being. We could have just been buying crude oil and firing the plants. Ghana took the bold. Can you imagine thinking about pipeline infrastructure across 4 countries and 2 of them being French speaking? Can you imagine about the politics, the negotiations and all that? But it did happen. And this is what happens when a nation feels very strong. So Ghana did very, very, very well. And currently, the energy mix in Ghana is between 40-50% in a range of hydro versus thermal. And the thermal is largely fired by gas, which is believed to be clean, which is believed to be transition fuel. So the point I'm making is that there is a huge drive and very, very big promises that have been made around the world about energy transition. My personal view is that it's an exaggeration. There are companies that have said that in the next 5 years, they will invest in oil and gas again. There are companies that have said that, they wouldn't give you a facility if you are developing oil and gas. My strong feeling, fortunately, in the last few months, is coming out. The chief executive of Saudi Aramco recently was one of the first people to be boldly say this, and I have been saying this, that oil and gas is going to be with us for a long time to come. For those who fly a lot, I haven't seen a solar aeroplane yet. I haven't seen a solar vessel yet. And think about, beyond transportation, what oil and gas has done to the world is huge. And for me, the industry that has been built, the technology, the people, today, the homes for renewable research is the oil and gas companies. The BP is no more British Petroleum, but it is what? Beyond Petroleum. Total is no more Total Oil and Gas, but it's called what? Total Energies. So major researches are going on at these places where people are looking at how efficiently we could use petroleum. So the question is not, energy transition doesn't mean that you should kill oil. What it means is that you must reduce your carbon emissions. And there's so many things that you can do to reduce emissions. In this country, do you know the percentage of our mothers and sisters who use LPG in their homes? Is a very small percentage. The bulk of the others use firewood and charcoal. And these are major contributors of carbon emissions to the environment. Do you think they just love the smoke from the firewood? They don't. It is too expensive. So there are many things to do. If we are so committed to the environment, we must ensure that we move away, for example, from biomass, from charcoal. That is a way of saying that we are making some move in that direction. It will interest you to know another source of huge carbon emission in this country is traffic. And I was a student in this university when the School of Engineering designed and manufactured traffic lights. And that was a big news in this country. And today, we cannot synchronize our traffic lights. So you are traveling from, say, from Accra Mall to the ministry, and you meet 4 traffic lights. Each of them will be red when you get there. This tells us that we are not using technology. If you are able to simulate these things very well, when it is green from Tetekwashi, it will be green all the way to Ministry of Energy. Why is this relevant? This is relevant because you spend less time in traffic, the pollution is minimal. So there are many things we could do. Look at the level of our roadworthiness regime. You go behind the trotro and the emissions behind the trotro, you don't need to be a scientist to know that this is terrible. That is an area you can cut emissions. So my dear colleague, maybe in another day we will talk about energy transition. My view about it is that it has been exaggerated by the world. In fact, let me just tell you, Norway, once again, who is supposed to be the gold standard of environment, in 2023, they approved, I don't remember the number now, but about 20 or so plan of developments. This is a country that is known for its environmental stewardship. But before we get to the deadlines, they have approved 20 plans of development. And one plan of development, as you know, could be as much as a $10 billion project. So we are all being a bit of an ostrich, because the reality is that we need petroleum. If you go back to your room, just try and imagine how the world will be if we say that we are saying no to petroleum. So yes, the world is getting warmer. There are many things we could do, but I think we have to hasten slowly. Then there's a question about peak oil and advice not to use oil and all that. So the point is this: you need to do a comprehensive analysis of your situation. I told you about Ghana. So when other countries are complaining about energy transition, and I tell them that we need to think about what is called the energy trilemma or just transition. The average lady in the village may use one bottle of kerosene maybe in a week or in a month to light her lamp. And you are telling that lady to cut emissions, while somebody has say 3 SUVs parked in his home in Houston, Texas. That is not just. That is not an appreciation of the story. So the point is that if Ghana decides that, look, our energy mix today is made up of Akosombo and gas-fired thermal plants, and where we are around the equator with all the sunshine, we want to develop seriously our solar capability so that this country would fire our energy systems by hydro, gas-fired thermal plants, and solar. It does not mean that we are not promoting oil. What it means is that we are developing that resource, export it, get more money to be able to do other things. There is the energy mix around the world. You can't say you love oil. I mean, I'm an oil and gas person, but I also look at other sources of energy. So what Norway has done is very smart. I expect us to do the same. We are around, in a country like the Netherlands, the sun shines nicely only 20 days in a year. We have it 365 days. So how can they have solar systems when the solar percentage in our mix is very small? If they get 365 days of solar, I am sure you would have seen what they would have done. So every country's context is different, and you must design your strategies to favor you.
A round of applause. Any other questions?
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for the enlightenment.
Thank you very much. Sir, we'll take this one and then we'll come back for the next round. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very good questions. How can we ensure the predictability of a regulatory regime? I'm going to give you an anecdote as a response to that question. So I used to be the regulator of the upstream industry in Ghana between 2013 and 2017. There were many industry players who got their licenses, approval of permits, whatever, and did their work. without meeting me. I later joined Modec, and my supply chain manager said that for the 4 years I was there, he never met me. He doesn't have to meet me. The laws are there is the acts, there are the regulations, there are, many other guidelines. If you want a permit, there is a form, there is a checklist. If you fill everything and submit it, if the number of days is 10 days, on the 10th day you get a call and you get your permit. That is predictability. There are petroleum agreements, and in petroleum agreements, the conditions, responsibility, and rights are stipulated. We must have the attitude of respecting what is in the legislation and what is the petroleum agreement. That is what guarantees predictability. And I tell you, I have spoken on this topic many times. For me, this is more powerful than the issue of fiscal regime change, because this industry is unique. If I tell you to come into business with me, and I tell you that, but you will get your money back in 5 years, I'm sure most people will walk away. But in the oil and gas business, if you get your return, in other words, your payback time is earlier than 10 years, you are very lucky. In some instances, beyond that. So there is a very long payback time. And what companies hate is regular changes in what we call the fiscal stability. You don't want any variation. And so state actors need to understand this. If you tell me that all companies must suddenly pay a COVID levy of X, what you don't appreciate is that he made a fiscal modeling of this business over a 30-year period, and all taxes were part of the model. And based on that, the NPV was positive, he decided to invest. If you decide that the most interesting topic now is COVID levy and you slap it, you change his profitability, and he will not be interested in doing business here. So state actors must know the animal they are dealing with. Petroleum. It has a high capex, high risk, long payback time, and they don't want games. So that is a practical explanation to what predictability means. The next question talks about how Ghana can make the industry attractive. I think number one is what I've explained, predictability. And if you want to be much more or two of our major players have some disputes that have gone through arbitration. That obviously has become a very big disincentive to investors in this industry. And I believe that there are current attempts to resolve the misunderstanding for operations by both parties to continue. Nations' ability to resolve disputes is very, very important. Imagine that you have developed a field with a credit facility of $5 billion US. Even at 10%, okay, or let's say 5% in dollar terms, 5% on $500 million. I think that must be what? 25, is it $25 million or thereabouts? So if the amount is $5 billion, 10% is 500 million, 5% is what, $250 million. Can you imagine that your delay in taking a decision on a problem cost a company $250 million a year? So this, for me, and this is my personal view, is that is one of the powerful issues we need to resolve to bring stability and make the future clear for this country. The last questioner asked about why we are not building refineries. I'm wondering where to start with this topic, but it is the desire of every country everybody wants that to happen, value addition. But we must be disciplined if we want to do that. Okay? If you are developing a field and the field was $5 billion, most companies, except the very big ones, get a facility for development. It's very normal in the industry. So imagine you've taken this money, and when you take these facilities, the collateral are the cargoes of oil you take. That is the collateral. This is a very standard way of running the business. So every cargo that is taken has a destination and has an owner. And we do what is called COLA, Crude Oil Lifting Allocation Table. And we know for the next 5 years or whatever, who will pick which cargo and which refinery is going to and who owns it. And so people don't joke with cargoes. If you have a refinery, whether owned by the state or whatever, and we give you a cargo and payment is in 30 days, my brother, no excuse. In this business, one day is several $1 million. So in the wisdom of the framers of the legislation in this country, there is a chapter in petroleum agreement called domestic crude oil requirements. And what it says is that at any given time, if the state needs petroleum, the petroleum you lift, you must first give it to the state to use, but they must pay market prices. Because they've given you your tax, they've given you your royalty, and they have to go and sell their oil. If you want it, no problem, but please, my money. So if you're asking why we are not refining our crude, and I've heard people talk theories that the oil we produce cannot, it is not true. There is nothing wrong with the oil. Ghana's oil is actually Brent plus. In other words, it's a premium on Brent. Superior oil, can be refined anywhere. But you must be disciplined in putting a financial instrument that you will honor. So that's the answer to the question.
All right, a round of applause.
Hi, thank you very much, MD, for the fantastic delivery. We've been privy to this some time ago, and
Thank you, Doc. I always enjoy having a chat with the gentleman. Very interesting listening. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for this wonderful presentation. My question is about local content. You happen to be the regulator when these discussions came up. But it's as though local content is just about business. What about academia? What is the what is the piece of the pie for academia when it comes to collecting data, accessing these companies, and also getting the chance to learn from these companies? It's becomes very difficult, especially with getting data and embarking on local research. And as well, when it comes to time for consultancy, these companies like to go outside and they outsource this consultancy and then they leave us here. So what do we have in our local content laws when it comes to academia and research? Thank you.
The last question, please, for this round.
for this opportunity. Please, my question is, as a young you may take the questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam. Very good questions. And, Madam, with your permission, I would like to take the last question. There's a young man who has been speaking to me, and he went to school after working for a while to go and study maintenance, and he wanted to join my company. So he came to speak with me, and I said I would arrange for him to meet the head of maintenance and reliability. And when he started speaking to me, he made it very clear that he was looking for a role like a maintenance and reliability manager. And I smiled, and I said, wow, I see. I said, well, that makes it difficult for me, because you are going to work under one of my colleagues called Ako Amega. This man has almost 40 years in the oil and gas industry, has worked from Saudi Aramco to whatever around the world, in the US, this man is an authority on maintenance. And he's been working for about 40 years. And you've come from school last year, and you want to be maintenance manager. How do I solve this problem? How do I solve this problem? And so, and I'll give you the second anecdote to your question. When the oil discovery was made, I had very difficult requests, sometimes from very senior people that gave me some trouble. I mean, a lot of people went to Aberdeen to go and study oil and gas management. And when they came back, they wanted management roles. And they were very serious. And at times, some of the requests had gone to all kinds of very high places. And one thing I like to do when there's a request for employment is to sit with a person and have some conversation. I said, look, do you want to manage my palynologist, my geochemist, my rock physicist, my reservoir engineers? Who do you want to manage? Because you must understand the thing before you manage. But more often than not, there is a desire for management position. It makes it very difficult. I think this dovetailing into the next question should make me introduce one of my colleagues here, is Mr. Maxwell Emisa, the first Ghanaian offshore installation manager in Model. Please, let's see. Now, this man is the chief executive of that facility that sits in the middle of the sea. So that $1.7 billion facility, this is the boss of the facility. This is the first time we have a Ghanaian take that position. And my admiration of this gentleman is his humility to have started from the scratch, all the way up. And this man knows the FPSO like his hand. But it didn't come from joining as a manager. He came all the way from the bottom. And so my plea to my colleagues is that, please, we must first be interested in building capacity, and then we get into a management role. Else, it makes it very difficult. It's a very, very long journey, and so we need to take our time. Let me quickly deal with the other question of local content. Yes, it's very important. Yes, getting local content opportunities is not easy, but I think if you listen to the Pro Vice Chancellor from the very beginning, or actually the Provost, he mentioned the support that we are giving to the School of Engineering in the area of collaboration. That is my passion, and at any opportunity, we try to give that support. Two of your faculty members visited us offshore, and after that we had some conversation, and they told me how wonderful the experience was. There are many other things we're doing with this department which we can't elaborate, but I know it could be challenging, but I'm a real champion of that and I take it very seriously. For your information, when UMAT started petroleum engineering and petroleum geology, in my role as chief executive of the Petroleum Commission, we took the challenge of helping them develop the curriculum for those programs. So I'm a very passionate person about that, okay? There was a question on my Doc asked me that question about ring fencing. Yes, Doc, this is a very important part, and I'm glad you asked that question. It's a subject that I took a strategy to deal with. It's a big problem, and if you don't deal with it, it creates a lot of issues. The revenue manager is the Ghana Revenue Authority, GRA. Now, to tell GRA to distinguish between an appraisal well, a development well, whatever, is unfair because they have the legal mandate, but obviously they don't have that technical. You don't expect that from them. I think it's too much to do that. When I was regulator, what I did was to arrange monthly meetings with the GRA, where we sat down one afternoon and went through very interesting topics. One of them was ring fencing. Because if the ring fencing rules are not clear or they are not understood, because it relates to a lot of money. You've drilled 3 wells, and there's a conversation whether you can ring fence that to the production that is going on or not. Hey, if one well is $70 million, this conversation is about $210 million. You'll be in arbitration. So it is important to empower the state actors so they understand. The rules from my viewpoint are quite clear, but understanding them at times is a problem. And I think the revenue manager, the resource manager, as well as the environment manager must work together to be able to solve this.
Someone who asked the question at the back. Okay, so the desire is always to
guys so much. Thank you very much for having me.
Keep clapping. It's a process. You don't wake up and become the MD overnight because you graduated with first class in engineering from KNUST. It's a stepping stone, but you need to avail yourself to go through the process to get to where your heart desires to get to. Our manager says it takes character. Build your content, and then you'll be able to rise to where you want to rise to. Please, after school, when you have the opportunity to study with anybody, whether internship, national service, graduate trainee, whatever position that you occupy, make it a point that you are there to build your content first, and then people will run after you, knowing what you have inside you. Thank you very much for the presentations we've had today. And to do us the closing remarks and the presentation of souvenirs to our speaker, I want to invite the Provost of the College of Engineering, Professor Kwabena Brichimiaka.
Say a special thanks to our speaker. The topic, timely, relevant, and I did learn a lot, that even beyond the fiscal, there's a lot more that we can get out of this industry. We had an example of Norway, and I believe in Ghana we can learn from it and do more. We know that through the oil and gas industry, if we look at even Ghana over the years, we have developed some expertise that can be used in the energy space, be it solar, windmill, whatever, based on what we've done over the years. And just as in Norway, because they had a resource, they have developed a lot of the hydro power. We can do same. We know the example of the West Africa gas project, where we're utilizing the gas from the sub-region to enhance our energy production. That is the way to go. We also had the predictability of the regulatory framework, which is important given the high capex. Because for the oil and gas industry, you need a lot of money to recover over a long period, maybe 20 years or more. So the political economy of our regulatory regime is very important in order to assure investors that we are open for business, they can work with us. So the predictability is very, very important. Also heard about the energy transition, having the big picture, not saying enough of oil and gas, given that a lot of us rely on biomass. A lot of us rely on biomass. Oil and gas, even though now, what's the name of the ministry? Energy and, is it green transition? Yes, we started looking at the green. In fact, if you go to KNUST main administration, you see the solar panels there. During the day, I think, most of our activities are during the day. We have a lot of panels generating a lot of our energy requirements. And I'm told even some of the weekends, we generate more than we can use. So we've started these activities, but we need to have the big picture. That is very important. So, Mr. Theophilus Nyako Ahrin, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the College of Engineering have over 10,000 students. College of Science say about 20,000. So the question is, how do we get some of them in the oil and gas space? And you answered it very well, especially to our dear friend who wants to be a manager. And I think it goes to all of you. So thank you very much, the team from MODEC. I was saying, the guy should look for the HR manager. We have a Cleopas here, should make him his friend, but that will not guarantee you a job unless you do the needful. A big thanks to also the Professor Opon Chichiku, Public Lectures Committee. Chair is here. Oh, I thought some of them were wanted to. Oh, a round of applause. Profile and knowing what we have done in the industry, we say thank you so very much. We are really proud of you. So our students here, looking at what he has done, and when he was pouring out his heart to us, I pray that you follow suit and even do more than what he has achieved, because he has had a privilege also imparting to you.
Announcement, and then Reverend Father will give us the closing prayer. All staff of KNUST, guests, invited guests, people from the staff from MODEC, all will go to the engineering guest house for a few discussions. My beloved students, kindly remain seated when the program ends and let the guests exit, and then we will see you beautifully before you exit the auditorium. Yes.
I was your moderator, Emanuela Kwabwatin from the Department of Chemical Engineering. Thank you. Reverend Father.
We please rise for prayers. Let us pray. Our shelter in stormy winds, we are grateful to you for this successful, thought-provoking public lecture in which your sons and daughters and each and every one gathered here has been enriched by your own servant, Mr. Theophilus. We thank you for the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. We thank you for the College of Engineering. We thank you for all that you use this university and this college to accomplish in the life of humanity. And we thank you for ever crowning our efforts and making us the #1 destination of quality education globally, where your sons and daughters can acquire quality and holistic education for themselves to be able to impact our community, the world at large. It is our prayer that you continue to grant us all the resources that we need in offering quality education to the young. We are also grateful to you for the gift and life of your son, Mr. Theophilus. We thank you for all that you have used him to accomplish in the life of humanity. We thank you for the intelligence, the wisdom you have granted him thus far. It is our prayer that you continue to use him to make greater impact in the life of humanity. We are also grateful to you for these thought-provoking words, encouraging us how best we can harness our energy sector for our own common and collective good. It is our prayer that this thought-provoking thoughts remains with us, even as we journey through our life, form and train ourselves. We are grateful to you for our stakeholders, sponsors, development partners, friends of this noble and prestigious university and our College of Engineering. We thank you for their contribution to this university. Continue to grant them all the graces and blessings that they need to continue to buy into our ideas and support us. For the planning committee, the organizers, and every individual who have had a hand in this public lecture, we ask you to bless them and bless the work of their hands. And for all of us who are gathered here, who have witnessed this occasion, continue to instill in us the desire to know, to learn, and to impact humanity. As we depart from here, we commit ourselves, the work of our hands, our families to you. Be with us, lead us to our destination safely and sound. And for our dear students, even as we prepare ourselves for our mid-semester examinations, grant us retentive memories, help us to understand and find fulfillment in our studies, grant success to them even as they go through their examinations. As we live here, may we all enjoy your abundant blessings. These and many blessings we ask through Christ our Lord. Amen.